For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
You're on StratNewsGlobal. I'm Nitin Gokhale. This evening we have a special program and a special guest on our program in the evening that we go live with. The program is GIST, of course, as all our viewers know. And I have somebody who is just been elected the president of the Tibetan government in exile, Penpa Tsering, who's joining me from Dharamshala live. But we will be taking questions from the audience as we go along. But let me welcome Penpa Tsering and congratulate him. But before that, let me say this, that StratNewsGlobal has this evening program called The Gist, which we go live on. Penpa Tsering, good evening and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be part of your program.
In fact, let me congratulate you on the election as the president, as they call Sikyong of the Tibetan government in exile. And also, let me start by asking you that having been elected as the president of the Tibetan government in exile, what is your priority as you take the charge of the government in exile, as far as the Tibetan affairs are concerned?
There are two main responsibilities for the Central Tibetan Administration. One is to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict, because of which we are in exile. Because of China's occupation of Tibet, we are in exile. So we have to work with the Chinese government to resolve this issue with wholeheartedness from both sides, because negotiation and dialogue doesn't happen only from one side. So we'll make every effort to reach out to the Chinese government. Until a lasting solution is found, we will be pointing out to the Chinese leaders as to what are the policies and programs they are implementing inside that are not beneficial, both for the Chinese government and the Tibetan people. And the second responsibility, of course, once the Chinese government is more responsive and work towards a lasting solution for the issue of Tibet, then there will be a change in course. And till such a time, we will be pushing our advocacy work forward in multiple terms, by using all the potential that we have, by optimizing all the potential that we have around the world. The second responsibility is to look after the welfare of the Tibetan people. So just like in any democracy, whenever we have elections, there is division within the community. So my first job would be to bring together all the Tibetan community together, starting from the top. So yesterday I met with the Supreme Justice Commissioners. In a few days, we'll be having the parliament in session. So I'll be talking to the parliament about the relationship that we need to maintain for pure democratic polity. And then I'll be talking with the autonomous bodies and also the non-governmental organizations and the media. So these are some of the things that we need to attend to immediately.
Yes, indeed. Very detailed program you've chalked out for yourself as you take the leadership. As someone who's chosen or is in favor of a middle path on the the Sino-Tibet issue, how do you see the approach towards the Chinese government, which has not held formal talks for over a decade now? Do you think they're amenable to any talks now? Because given that President Xi Jinping is a hardliner and has sort of become a stronger nationalist, if I may say so, do you think there is any hope of those talks being revived, or you have no hopes really? What is your view?
We always remain very confident and positive about the outcome, because as in Buddhist thinking, we know that everything is impermanent. Change is the only constant. So the Chinese Communist Party, however strong they are right now, cannot remain that strong forever. So there will be a time, but it's difficult to say what time or when these things will happen. All I can say is I don't have a magic wand to resolve this issue by myself. We all believe in humanity, so I also like to believe that the present Chinese leadership, who are supposedly quite hardliner, just as in other countries also, you always also have softliners. So we really hope that common sense prevails on the Chinese leadership, and they work towards resolving national issues, not just the Tibetan issue, but also Uyghur issue and a Mongolian issue, so that so that the China can command moral power on top of the military and political and economic power they enjoy. The only thing they lack is moral power. So we would really expect the Chinese leadership to be wise enough to take the right course, not just with the Tibetans, but also with its immediate neighbors and other important countries around the world. Because right now, what they are doing doesn't seem to be the right path.
Absolutely. In fact, as we speak, there is this comment which has come from one of the viewers, and there he's liked this comment of yours that there is impermanence. The Buddhist way is about impermanence. There is. So I think you hit the right chord. It also reminds me of my interview with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in January 2020 in Bodh Gaya, where he said that the Chinese may even choose my successor, but it will have no credibility. In fact, as you can see, that visual is playing out. He said that nobody will take that chosen successor by the Chinese seriously, not the Tibetan people, not the people who support the Tibetan cause. So, in that sense, I think you are carrying forward that same philosophy. But there are other critics and other people who are worried about the situation in Tibet. They say time is running out for Tibet, and therefore it has to be, whatever has to be done immediately. Do you think do you ever feel despaired about time running out, or that the Chinese are so strong that it might take a lot of effort from the world, but the world is not really stepping up to do what they should do in the measure that they should do?
Is waking up now. So when we say we don't have much time, the question revolves around China's policies and programs, particularly to do with demographic aggression, through which the kind of cultural genocide is taking place inside Tibet. So that is also one of the reasons why we keep following the middle way approach, because I keep telling my people that, another 20, 30, 40 years down the line, if we are not able to return back to Tibet, forget about independence, even autonomy may not make sense when Tibet is completely overwhelmed by a Han majority community over the minority Tibetan nationalities. It's a very, very concerning situation for us.
Indeed. In fact, there is a question from one of the audience, and I'm sort of going to mix it up with my questions. Ma Tara, she's a lady. She's saying, I'm interested to know what the Sikyong views on the massive infrastructure development by China in Tibet, especially the dams of the Himalayan rivers. I think you'll have to sort of satisfy the viewer's question. What do you think about the infrastructure development?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are not against development, but development has to be sustainable. That is the reason why we have been pointing out to not just China, but also the whole world, that the environmental situation inside Tibet does not concern only the Tibetans. It affects the whole region: Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, including China, from where the rivers flow. That is why Tibet is also known as the fountain of Asian rivers. Therefore, building dams too many dams. One or two dams may be acceptable, but you are talking about several dozens of dams on one single river. So that is a manipulation of hydro resources, and China also does not share hydrological data with the neighboring countries, so the downstream countries don't have enough idea about what's going to happen to them. When there is flood, they are overflooded. When there is no water because of the damming, today we are political refugees. But because of China's damming projects inside Tibet, now we see many more environmental refugees in the downstream countries. People lost their livelihood. People have to change their lifestyle to, make another living. Earlier, they were dependent on the rivers that flow from Tibet. So these are very important issues. I think the U.S. has just woken up to that. So they are looking at the Mekong tributaries, the countries that Mekong flows through. Similarly, I think Pakistan and India and other countries also should be concerned. There is some level of understanding on this matter, but this needs a lot more amplification and also understanding of the situation as to how this is going to affect the livelihood of people downstream. Then the downstream countries are not just small nations. They are highly densely populated nations in the world. So it's very, very concerning, particularly damming and the environmental situation, the fragile environmental situation inside Tibet.
I think very well put. So, in that context, I have one more question about the what I call the Hanisation of Tibet. I think you have also spoken about it. Your other Tibetans have spoken about it. Is it only about destroying culture? It's also about subjugation of religion. And despite the fact that, as His Holiness said again in the interview in January 2020, that you would be surprised, and I was really surprised. He said there are more people adopting Buddhism amongst the Han Chinese. So, is there a way that the inherent strength of Buddhism will overcome the Hanization that's happening in Tibet?
It depends again on the time factor as to when we can go back or not. You call it Hanization, some call it Sinification, some call it Sinicization. Whatever term you use, the policies and the programs of the Chinese government are aimed only, whenever there's a problem, they talk about development, development, development. They believe that development can resolve all human miseries, which is not true, because that is only the physical aspect of it. What is more important is the mental aspect of human beings. So Tibetans have been practicing Buddhism for more than 1,300 years, but Buddhism went to China much before it came to Tibet. We, of course, got it directly from India, but then the Buddhism was much more prevalent in China. Therefore, in the vacuum that followed communist China and the deprivation of people from practicing their spirituality, there is now a revival, a sense of revival, despite all the restrictions. And a lot more people are paying a lot more attention to Tibetan Buddhism, which is a lineage of the Mahayana Nalanda tradition of Buddhism. And now people who have some sense, who have an understanding, realize that Tibetan Buddhism is not what the Westerners earlier used to call as Lamaism, but that is much more to do with the scientific approach of living. It is a way of life, philosophy that deals with psychology, and quantum physics and all that. So it's good that Chinese are showing interest in Tibetan Buddhism, but at the same time, the nation tries to subjugate. So all the terms that use, whether it's subjugation or whatever, is very much relevant in this case. But much more so, I definitely feel that the policies and programs that reflects from the Chinese government side amounts to cultural genocide. Because then you are destroying Tibetan Buddhism, you are destroying Tibetan language, everything to do with Tibetan national identity. So if that happens, that is definitely cultural genocide.
Indeed. In fact, one of the aspects of that cultural genocide that you spoke about could also be the Chinese insistence on the fact that they want to select the successor to His Holiness, and in that sense, they are saying that the Tibetans in exile have no right to choose, or the His Holiness has no right to choose his successor. We will do it. How will you resolve that, and what will happen? The question that is in the minds of the supporters of Tibetan cause and Buddhism is that what after His Holiness? And that question, I'm sure, is dogging everyone who's concerned with Tibet. What do you have to say to that?
I think one thing that the watchers should understand is that Tibetan Buddhism and the concept of reincarnation is purely Tibetan Buddhist in nature, and it's a highly spiritual thing. The relationships that historically we enjoyed with the Mongols was priest-patron relationship, and we had very little to do with the Ming dynasty that is wholly Chinese. But then when the Manchus came in, again, we enjoyed a certain level of priest-patron relationship. But after 1959 or 51, from the 17-point agreement onwards, it is communist China. At least the Chinese emperors with whom we had relations were Buddhist. Even then, their interference in the Buddhist structure of Tibet, in Tibet was very, very minimal. What China claims in the white paper about reincarnation is not wholly true. So right now the situation is you have a communist government who does not believe in religion, who are atheist, and trying to interfere in the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the 14th His Holiness the Dalai Lama is still very much living in India. We are striving to ask or urge the Chinese government to invite him to visit China and Tibet. While they are not bothered about the well-being of the 14th Dalai Lama and his people, then why should they be bothered about the 15th Dalai Lama? It's obvious that they want to use it as a political tool, and I believe I would like to believe that they have learned their lesson from selecting their own Panchen Lama, who is not respected by Tibetans anywhere in the world, leave alone inside Tibet. So those lessons need to be learned, and if the Chinese, I'm sure you must have asked the same question to His Holiness when you interviewed him, and I remember His Holiness saying in jest that if the Chinese leadership is really concerned about the reincarnation issue, they should look for Mao Zedong's reincarnation first, Deng Xiaoping's reincarnation second, and then maybe the Dalai Lama's. So unless you believe in the system, if you want to use it only as a political tool to subjugate the Tibetans or try to reinforce their power on the Tibetans, that is not definite. It's not going to be lasting solution. If you want to find a solution, then it has to be lasting, that meets the aspiration of the Tibetan people.
Indeed. So, in that context, how do you see the role of the Western nations, especially the United States? There is an increasing sort of despair amongst Tibet watchers that Western leaders are now shying away from meeting His Holiness whenever he visits. His space for more meetings is getting constricted. Is there any expectations from the Western nations and, of course, India? What would be your expectations? My question in two parts: Western expectation, Western support and Indian support.
Yeah, Shai Desi is also asking the same question.
Yes, that's why I thought that.
Yeah. Now compared to the situation earlier and now, if the pandemic is not happening right now, if His Holiness had been a little younger right now, then I'm sure there would be many more people wanting to meet him under the current circumstances when China's belligerence is creating a lot of problems with almost every country in the world, not just in its immediate neighborhood, but also in the South China Sea and the European Union and US, everywhere. So there is a sense of realization that As we the more the Western nations engage with the Chinese government, the Chinese government would become more responsible. That has not happened. The expectations were completely not as per the Western nations wished. Therefore, today there is a definite realization, if you base the reaction from the US government, not just the immediate past president, but even presidents before that. And now Biden's administration is also quite strong on China. The very fact that Secretary Blinken wished the Tibetans on Tibetan New Year, that's a first. That has never happened before. And Nick Price, the spokesperson of State Department, wishing us on our electoral success and committing future cooperation. Those are also a first. So in fact, fortunately, since 1987, when His Holiness the U.S. Congress for the first time to the Human Rights Caucus about the 5-point peace plan, there has been a steady increase in the support for Tibet in the United States, both from the administration, the White House, as well as the Congress. So we are very fortunate to have bipartisan, bicameral support in the United States. And we are really looking forward to take some step forwards as to how to align policies of United States along with other allies who enjoy the same universal values of freedom, democracy, justice, and human rights. That will be one step that I'm really looking forward to work with the United States government. I think we are making headway there. There are a lot of signals, pointers to that. And in India, of course, India is the nation who understands the Tibet issue from the beginning till now. I don't know about what Chinese call as time immemorial, when that began, or when should we count from there. But at least from the time that India and Tibet had cultural religious relationship, we were mentally much more closer to China, India than any other country. Therefore, the very reason that His Holiness decided to come to India, not any other country, to seek refuge, and the Tibetans being very well received by the Indian people, as well as the Indian government, successive governments, now irrespective of how strong they were at one time or not. Now, of course, we see a lot of columns, not a lot of new writings expressing people who were in power position, expressing their concern about India's policy towards Tibet and China. And there is a deep down understanding, only because of China's belligerence and their action, that Tibetan issue cannot be just used as a leverage, a political or diplomatic leverage, but this needs to be resolved if there has to be peace in the region. We are not just talking about Tibet or Central Asia. We are talking about the whole South Asia and the whole geostrategic, geopolitical region.
As you can see, there's this question from Anish Maske. He talks about last year's crisis in Ladakh, the ongoing standoff, if you want to call it, or the tension there in eastern Ladakh. So he's asking whether the aim is something else rather than an aggression against India. What's your view on that?
I have been, whenever we have discussions about these issues, I have been speaking to my friends that China will definitely create flashpoints around the world, particularly around its neighborhood. So India is, that is also the reason why after so many rounds of dialogue, China has not resolved this issue, border issue with Tibet, with India, which was India-Tibet border. Even now we have Indian-Tibetan border police force. Yes. So the only reason I can think of, building villages in such remote places which are very difficult to be accessible, In Doklam we are talking about now, in Galwan, all this aggression is just to create flashpoints during this pandemic. If there are social unrest within China, then they could say, oh, India is attacking us, instead
It's
of
a
saying we
diversionary
attack
tactic.
India.
It's a
So that
diversionary
builds nationalism in Chinese
Yes.
people. And because of the nationalism, the communists may not fall. That is the only reason I can think of from my experience for China's belligerence on the Indian
Indeed.
border.
Yes, I agree fully with you, and I can only see that you have a task on hand, having taken over the leadership now, and of course, His Holiness is always there to guide in the larger framework, really. And as I can see, there's the support that the Tibetan cause and Buddhism enjoys across the world is only increasing. I think that should worry the Chinese more than anything else. So on that note, I want to thank you for giving me the time and giving StratNews Global this opportunity to have a discussion with you rather than an interview. And I think hopefully we'll have more occasions going forward. But we wish you all the best in your tenure that you are now going to be the president of the Central Tibetan Administration. You are the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, and we wish a lot of good things happen during your tenure. On that note, let me thank you and all our viewers who asked the relevant questions. We wish to congratulate you once again and hope to see you sometime soon. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Nitin, for your
Thank
time, for inviting me and to spread the word of Tibet. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
Thank you.
So, viewers, thank you for joining in large numbers and asking the questions. As you know all our social media handles. You know where to go for subscription in case you want to subscribe to our channel, and of course, you know where to press the bell icon to get all the alerts and all the information. Do keep sending feedback and comments. We will continue to bring such programs to you, and of course, the important geostrategic, geopolitical, and geoeconomic issues that we'll continue to discuss on Strat News Global. Until the next time, it's goodbye.